I just get such a kick out of that music every time. I can't get over it. I love that music so much because it means it's time for another week of the Rec Poker Podcast Forums Edition. I'm your host, Jim Reid, Bluffsterini in the home games and at Hold'em_Steelers on Twitter. I'm joined here by this illustrious group of Rec Poker Wizards. Wizards, why don't you introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I'm Chris Jones. I'm 5x5 on PokerStars and Twitter.
I'm John Somsky, and I'm Poker Geek MN everywhere.
I'm Rob Watson. I'm Rabman50 everywhere.
And I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors, the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino, and website AMP. So every week we play in this Monday night Rec Poker home game on PokerStars, trying to take each other's play money and earn a shot at the bronze pin. And every week we dip into the Rec Poker forums and we pull a post to talk over with our friends here. This week, we're joined for a second week in a row by one of our favorite forum posters, Keith at Monkey System. Keith, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello, I'm Keith Brandt from Wisconsin, low stakes player, member of Rec Poker, and I am Monkey System pretty much everywhere.
It's a great handle, and I like your avatar too. With the, I see that every once in a while. It always makes me smile with the gorilla with the teeth smiling up there. So that's a lot of fun, and I always smile whenever I see a Monkey System post because I know we're about to get into something good. So Keith, you've got a post here called "Top Pair Second Kicker Out of Position in a 3-Bet Pot, Villain Shoves." So tell us a little bit about what made this spot interesting and what you were trying to tease out of the group when you put it in the forums post there.
Okay, yeah, this hand here was interesting because I felt like I needed to make an exploitative play. First of all, I was using exploitative ranges, and then I was making an exploitative play. This was a low-stakes multi-table tournament on ACR, and I didn't have a whole lot of information on Villain yet. I had maybe 40, 50 hands on him. So what happened here was that I had ace-queen suited and opened with that. And then Villain on the button re-raised me and then folds. And then I called.
And just a note on sizing, it looks like you opened to 3 big blinds, and the button raises 2 7 big blinds. So that's a very small 3-bet. Just we should all be kind of paying attention to that little spidey sense in the back of our mind. That's a relatively small 3-bet for that spot. And it folds around to you and you call?
Yep.
Okay.
And then the flop came and gave me top pair second kicker.
Yeah, so the flop comes, there's 16 big blinds in the pot. The flop comes ace of spades, 7 of spades, 3 of spades. We've got the ace of hearts, queen of hearts. So we've got top pair, second kicker on a monotone board. And we are playing as the caller of a 3-bet pre-flop. So what are people thinking about that? Should we go through the action? Is there what are people normally doing in a spot like this before we get specific?
Well, my thought there was, since he was the pre-flop raiser, he was the pre-flop aggressor, I should just check to him, especially because I'm going to be out of position.
Yeah.
I mean, that just seems like an automatic. I mean, raising here would be like a donk bet.
Yes. Yep, I think that's right. And I think that's a good flow to be considering in this kind of a spot. Whenever I'm the aggressor pre-flop, especially if I'm in position, when I get a flop like this monotone, I'm always betting about a third of a pot, like literally 100% of the time, because I feel like people overfold in spots like that. So in your spot, I would also check expecting a small bet. Does anybody want to advocate for a bet there? You do have top pair. Nope.
I think that's right. Game flow says you should check here. I don't know that any solver is going to tell you anything different.
Yeah.
Yeah, the solver work that I did on it just tonight before we came on here made me indifferent between
betting and checking.
Betting and checking on this one. This was one of the few hands where I was indifferent.
And do we think?
I found that to be surprising. I thought the checking here would be automatic.
Yeah. And do we think that's just because we have top pair and we're kind of folding out some one spade hands that might be catching up to us otherwise? Because I agree, it does feel like in a vacuum. I'm surprised it's indifferent.
Yeah. So that would probably be the only reason to do that. Either that, or you're representing a draw to a flush or something yourself.
Mm-hmm. And some people will bet a small flush there too, just because they've got a flush to the 7.
They're afraid they won't get paid otherwise.
Yeah. Or that, they don't want that 4th spade to come off where the guy's just got some BS hand and one of them's a high spade. I hate that. I hate that when my flush gets counterfeit. Okay, so I think unconventionally or uncontroversially, we check, and the button shoves the flop. So they bet 26 big blinds into a a pot of 16.5 big blinds. So it's about 1.5 times the pot. It is a scary board. What do we think they're trying to do here? Is this a value play, a bluff play? Are they balanced? What was your thinking, Keith, in the moment when you checked to this player and they shoved?
My thinking was exactly something that Rob said one time in one of the other podcasts or schools here, was at these low stakes tournaments, these $6 tournaments, when they bet like that, they've got it.
Mm.
And that's what I thought. I thought this guy's got the flush. I mean, he might be bluffing with a draw to the nut flush, but I'm just going to go with the fact that this guy's got it. I don't even have top pair top kicker. I got top pair second kicker. He might have ace king also.
Yep.
So I thought I was beat 6 ways from Sunday here, and I just laid it down.
Yeah, ace king with the king of spades.
Right.
Yeah.
Then he's got the nut flush draw plus top pair, top kicker. Yeah, top kicker.
Yeah. But what I found interesting about this, I mean, this seems like pretty much set piece. It's almost automatic, but it was actually an exploitative play. I mean, because then when I went back into the solver, if we went with purely equilibrium play, I should call.
Mm.
But by folding, that was actually an exploitative fold. That's what I found interesting, was that it was pretty cut and dried in the solver based on an exploit. It wasn't
normally
close.
On monotone boards like this. It seems to me like either the pot ends up staying small or someone has the flush. So in this case, when you're hitting top pair there, my hope in this is to win a small pot. Because if the pot stays small, you probably have the best hand.
Yep.
If it starts to grow, now it could be someone who's on the semi-bluff. They've got the king queen with the king of spades in there or something like that. But that's the way I tend to see the monotone boards play out.
And what about people's 3-betting range? Because this was a small 3-bet, and I think, Keith, I see another note in the forum post here that I don't know how many hands it was, but they had a 3-bet statistic of 8.33. So that's a pretty robust 3-bet range.
But at the time, I was thinking, that's too small of a sample size to really draw any conclusions from it.
That's perfect. Perfect. That makes sense. And so does that, given that they're 3-betting, does that make you think that they have more or fewer suited combos in that range that continues? Like, are they more like what part of their range, what proportion of their range are suited hands? Like, I think the wider the 3-bet range is, the more suited combos there are in there. And just me anecdotally, the tighter it gets, I think it's more like just big pairs and high aces. Because the ace is part of the flush out there, so they can't have done it with a suited ace and still had a flush. So it means they had to 3-bet some of these other suited combinations. which isn't impossible. But it's when you're constructing their 3-bet range, now you're thinking, okay, so if they're doing it with some of these suited combos, then they're also doing it with all the other suits. Unless it's like a mixed strategy, of course, and who knows. But
yeah, because when I think about this this is a board that it's definitely scary. And when somebody overbets a pot like this, I really start to discount the nuts. Like I would be very surprised if I called this and they had king, queen of spades. Like I would be pretty shocked to find that. People, even at low stakes, when they flop the nuts, they want to get paid. And you don't want to scare people off. That's like a thing I think that is like instinctive on every poker player. Like I've got the nuts. I don't want to scare this. I want to reel them in, right? I don't want to scare them off. Mm-hmm. And so when I see these massive bets, this is to me screams something like single spade hands that have maybe some value in them. So the one that might beat us is ace king with the king of spades. But there's a lot that might not beat us. I think there's a lot like kings with the king of spades, queens with the queen of spades, jacks with the jack of spades. I think a lot of those types of hands are in range here, and I think they're the kinds of hands that we start to see. There might be a few, obviously aces are in play, but we block that. So there's only one combo of the aces. I'm probably calling this, is basically what I'm getting down to, is that I see this as somebody who this bet screams to me like, go away. And even if you don't, maybe I've got some backup plans. But it doesn't scream to me that we're beat. And I think actually that calling here, we're going to be a favorite to take this pot down. That's my take.
And it's a mix because it's a mix between the player type and the spot, right? So Keith is saying that typically when $6 tournament players over shove like this, it's because they have a very strong hand, which I think is true. And Chris is saying on monotone flops like this, overbet shoves tend to correlate to non-nutted hands, which I think is also true. And last week we talked about how someone was making a min bet from out of position, and how they probably only did that with value hands because they didn't exert any fold equity as a part of that move. And here's exactly the other side of that, where if they really did have a value hand, would they be shoving? And one thing that's interesting is they only have 26 big blinds and the pot 16. So given that they can get it in on future streets. There's no reason for them to make this overbet shove here if they are trying to capture value, especially with a flush, because it's just unlikely to get beat unless it's one of those low flushes. And again, I don't see them 3-betting that with like a 6-7 suited or something when they only have 32 big blinds to start. But I don't know. Maybe I'm kind of talking myself in circles here. I see there's some great comments in here in the post. ARW gets a few ones. Binkley, E. Anderson. And I see that, Keith, you're exchanging some more solver notes in here, and you've got some really detailed responses and some solver work here as well for equilibrium strategies on different streets. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you ran through the solver and how that helped you analyze the hand?
Well, first of all, I put what I estimated to be, in GTO Plus, there's no pre-flop solves. So I put what I estimated to be his range, and I put what I knew to be my range and estimated to be his range based on the pre-flop action, which was his 3-bet. I actually didn't read a whole lot into the sizing there because we are down to 26 big blind effective. I mean, the if you want to get it in, you can get it in with a small bet at this point.
Right.
And a lot of people play like that. The sizings kind of go down as the effective stacks go down. Mm-hmm. So that was part of my thinking. And I put him on tighter ranges than I normally would, just because He's 3-betting. He's covered. He's probably going to be playing scared. He's probably going to be playing like what my experience from low stakes tells me. So I put him on tighter 3-bet range than I would expect to see.
And that's a really good point about the sizing too, because when we were talking pre-flop about how he only 3-bet to 7, coming off a 32 big blind stack or a 34 big blind stack or something like that, that is a good point, because he should be 3-betting smaller there. He should also be 3-betting less, probably less frequently, but so maybe we shouldn't read too much into the sizing of that. That's a great point, Keith. Thank you.
But then,
I'm sorry, I think the most probable hands that he has are ace king with the king of spades or pocket kings with the king of spades.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are, I think if we had a chance to see what his hands were, I would be very surprised if it was anything but those two hands.
Yeah, and we're losing to one and beating the other.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And he's got a huge redraw.
Yeah.
On the kings.
Yep. Yeah, even if we were to tell you that he had pocket kings and you had an ace but no spades in your hand, and he had a spade in his hand, you're still not exactly fist pumping to put your tournament life on the line, drawing to no spade.
Right? He still might be a favorite.
Yeah, he's got king outs too, right? Mm-hmm.
I really thought he might have the flush though too.
Yeah,
that was my thinking at the time, and that was my thinking when I node locked the server for his shove.
Yeah,
because I'm putting him on the flush.
So then it just has to be a hand that he chose to 3-bet that didn't have the ace in it. So then that's the thing. Because if we're saying it's a flush, then he has to have 3-bet with a hand that didn't have the suited ace to get there. Which I there's lots of good reasons to do it, but it kind of speaks against the argument that his 3-betting range is really narrow, because there's just not going to be that many combos of non-ace suited hands that can do that. Still, even if it's just one, if it's king queen, that's all it takes. You still lose. Don't get me wrong, but I do think we can kind of eliminate a lot of the flushes from his hand because of the action, or from his range. Because of the action, even if not because of the player type. And I guess, Keith, part of it is we just don't want to be wrong, right? And so last week we talked about, what if he has king 10 and he turned his straight? Here it's like, what if he has the flush? They are going to have those sometimes. I don't need to tell you this. Like, they are going to have them sometimes. But as a proportion of their range, it's a pretty small part of their range. So you have to believe that either they're just playing very straightforwardly now, which is consistent with a $6 online tournament. And I think that's a big part of the answer there too. Like, what is this player capable of, and do they even know if they're value betting or bluffing? Because not everyone does all the time. And that can trip you up too, right? Yeah. He could be thinking he's value betting with a hand you beat. And you're gonna fold because it feels like a bluff. I don't know. I want to give a shout out to ARW Binkley and E Anderson for putting some really good stuff here in the forum. I really got to tell people, go to rec.poker, get a free community account, and check out the forums here, because there's some really deep knowledge in here. And Keith, I really love the way that you bring these detailed breakdowns and the screenshots of what's inside the solver, because I think a lot of rec poker players, they've heard about solvers, they've heard the conversations, but I don't know how many recreational players are really getting to this level of depth with that kind of technology. So it's great for you to be putting it out there for everybody else to see. So thank you for that. All right, any other thoughts here? Is there
just one other thought? Earlier Keith said something about what I've mentioned before, that they always have it. I think in these $6 tournaments, they always have it on the river. Okay, so when you get to that point and you're trying to decide whether you should bluff or not, or call it off thinking that they're bluffing, they're not. They have it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in this situation, we're talking right on the flop, so it's pretty early in the hand. But I still think that it's probably not a bad fold because he either has ace king with the king of spades or pocket kings with the king of spades.
Yeah.
And I think it comes down to me that I agree with that. Like, I think that, people always have it on the river, but maybe not earlier. And this
Right.
decision really comes down to me whether we think this player is doing this with the top of their range. So if they're doing this with a flush, then I like the fold. I think most players are not doing this with the flush, and I think they're probably wider. I think a lot of players on ACR at this level are even wider. They're doing this with, I think, a queen with a queen of spades, jack with a jack of spades, tens with a ten of spades even. Like, I think we might even get down to that level where people are like, this is a scary board, but I can get you off of it. I can get you to fold your whatever you got because everyone's scared of monotone flops. So I guess it kind of depends. If we think that this player can have king queen of spades, then I'm snap folding. But there are a lot of players who won't be able to have that.
Yeah,
Interestingly,
I don't think they have king queen of spades. I think you're right there. But I don't think they have tens or jacks either. I think it's really they have the king of spades.
Yeah, you're drilling down.
The king of spades is in there is in that hand. I don't care.
I don't know. I've seen some people with like the ten of spades in this spot.
Well, let's let Jonathan Little tell us about something first, and then we'll come back and get to the bottom of this.
Have you ever wondered whether you should call a preflop raise or 3-bet instead? What do you do when you have a flush draw? Do you raise it or do you just call? What do you do with ace king when you miss the flop? Are you tired of guessing about what the right play is with your particular hand? Well, my name is Jonathan Little, and I am a 2-time World Poker Tour champion and creator of PokerCoaching.com, where we offer over 1,000 interactive hand quizzes where you play a hand and then get real-time feedback from our world-class pros. Don't guess and don't stress. Just register for your free account at PokerCoaching.com/rec.poker right now.
Well, nailed the audio cue for that one, team. There we go. Things are looking up. And I will say, Jonathan Little's PokerCoaching.com, there is a lot of great stuff on there. He pays us to run the ad. He doesn't pay us to say this afterwards. Like, it is a great site. They have a lot of great training materials there. And Jonathan's really generous with his time on Twitter and that sort of thing as well. So Rob's decided this guy's got the king of spades in his hands. Chris has said that we think he's kind of capping his range when he makes this aggressive overbet shove on the monotone flop. Keith is saying that these amateur players in these spots tend to have it when they overbet shove. I think everyone's getting real close to truth there. Any final thoughts for the audience? Is there a way that we can learn from this in the future and take a lesson for future players? Should we just keep being thoughtful, strategic poker players on every street and living decision point from decision point? I agree. That is the best philosophy. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. As always, you can go to smallsmallbusiness.com to find some other ways to work with Steve Fredland. If you want to make him rich and famous so we can spend more time playing poker with the rest of us. And if you can't go to smallsmallbusiness.com, please help out our friends, the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino, and Mark Bershon at Website Amp. Thanks, Rob, John, Chris, Keith. See you next time.